welcome to a special Women Role edition of the Politico podcast. I'm Christine DeLargy in the Politico newsroom, joined by events editor Lois Romano and senior Washington correspondent Anna Palmer, two women who rule. This was a 3-month-long multi-platform series hosted by Politico with Google and the Tory Burch Foundation to showcase the most interesting and innovative women in the most interesting and innovative ways. Today we'll discuss highlights from the Women Rule Summit on December 4th and our takeaways from the series. Before we dive in, our plug, you can find everything we're talking about on politico.com/womenrule. So let's start off with our favorite moments, essays, events from the series. Lois, you first.
I would have to say that chatting with the Pelosi's, Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi and her daughter Alexandra, who is a filmmaker in New York, as sort of a mother-daughter team was my favorite moment. It really exceeded my expectations in that the leader, let her hair down and was just really chatty, and you had mother and daughter sort of correcting each other and revealing.
It was very humanizing.
It was very humanizing, and I had people say to me later that the one thing they really liked about it was that Mrs. Pelosi, who did not work until she was 46, reinforced people's choices, to motherhood, and said, don't be ashamed of it. It's a really good job. And they were just, at a certain point, as I said that day, I felt like I was a prop on stage. I really didn't have to do much. They carried the whole thing.
Anna?
I think my favorite kind of takeaway moments was when they were talking about networking and how women often, it's hard to be direct and kind of ask for what you want. And certainly Nell Morlino really put that, it was kind of cut to the chase. If you're asking somebody to do something for you, don't do the 5-minute wind up, and in our business as journalists, you kind of get in really quickly, ask them if they have time, and then you try to get the information as quickly as possible.
No, Nell absolutely exemplified what Lois said when she kicked off our first event with no whining, no complaining, real solutions. So Lois, why was that an important way to start this entire series?
Well, for me, in the lead up to our programming, I went to every women's conference that I could go to. And the one thing that struck me was that they all had sort of the same downbeat tone, which was, oh, woe is me. What are we going to do? We don't get paid enough. We don't have enough child care. We're just, persecuted and prosecuted. And I didn't want it to be about that those things all might be true and we still have a long way to go. But I thought it was extremely important that we give people positive outlook and takeaways. And that's the comments I got from people afterwards. So I feel like we really did succeed in that.
Anna, you moderated a panel with our colleague Maggie Haberman that we called the Peacemakers, Women in Congress. And there's obviously been a lot of attention to the 20 female senators and their counterparts in the House. What exchanges stuck out to you in the panel?
I think there were a couple of them. First of all, Senator Amy Klobuchar has been a real advocate of women in the Senate, and there's been a lot of discussion, as you said, about kind of how they work bipartisan. But I thought it was interesting when she was asked whether or not more would get done if there was a woman Democratic leader instead of having a Harry Reid as a Senate Majority Leader. What if a woman was in that position? And she kind of tiptoed around a little bit, making a joke about it. I don't think she wants to step on his toes by any means, but certainly said that the more women that are in chairmanship positions, that are in leadership, the more that gets done, the more kind of ability to work across party lines. And I also thought that Ann Wagner, representative from Missouri, had some really interesting things. She's a former ambassador, and she has really taken it upon herself to be very proactive in helping recruit women candidates, and really took that issue head on. Wasn't saying oh, it's not an issue for us. She said, you look at the Democrats in Congress and you look at us, there's a lot more Democrats here, and we need to find and encourage women who are Republicans to actually run.
One of my favorite moments from our summit was a panel that we called Cliches into Dollars with Cosmopolitan editor Joanna Coles, Stacey London, and moderated by Katty Kay. And it was a little outside of our realm in Politico. It touched on fashion and a little bit cliche topics, as we called the panel. But it really drove home the point that in order to make good policy and bring these kind of topics to the table, you do have to have the confidence and feel good about yourself as a woman, as anybody. What was the feedback that you guys heard about that panel?
So I loved it. I actually thought that was one of the more controversial ones. Certainly, I tweeted a lot about it, and I got different positive and negative comments. But Rochelle Behrens, who's also on the panel, is a friend of mine who was a former lobbyist, so kind of knows the Washington world. And created the shirt, which was basically a way to have like a button-down shirt that women would feel comfortable in. And I felt like the takeaway was, I think someone said, well, what about being sexy? And it's a lot about being a woman is about how you present yourself, and being appropriately dressed is important when you're in the Capitol, and how being taken seriously, but also not taking yourself so seriously that you can't have a little fun with it.
Why did people think it was controversial?
I think if you're having a thing about women rule and you're talking about, big ideas, peacemakers, and networking and things like that, I think it's a little bit lighter on the lighter side.
To talk about a shirt, you mean?
Yeah, and about, and fashion and.
But it's all part of that. I mean,
Totally.
we have to have clothes to wear. And so if somebody like Maria Pinto came and she's designing this whole line now, to be affordable. She was great, by the way, and she had an incredible story to tell. She made this amazing name for herself, designing beautiful dresses for Michelle Obama, and then the bottom fell out of her business. So now she's reevaluating and making affordable dresses for working women to travel in.
And relaunching her career with
Exactly.
Kickstarter,
Right.
which
Technology.
is a completely innovative way to
So I think,
relaunch.
there's just all different ways that women rule.
But I think that was the point of that panel also, was not just that there was a lot of value to things like fashion and how you look and present yourself as being almost as important as all of the really substantive decisions and conversations that we were having that day. Lois, I want you to take us backstage inside the green room, all of these interesting women. What was it like to be with them when they were letting their hair down on the stage, like you said with Nancy Pelosi, but really behind closed doors?
Well, it was really fun. And what was fun about it is that some of these women you kind of know at a distance, and they're well-heeled, and they're very successful, or they're powerful. And when they get backstage, they're sort of like kids in a candy store too, and they're really excited to be meeting each other. I mean, they're like running up to each other, introducing themselves, and that's really fun. And then they were just gossiping a little bit. There was just a lot of male gossip stuff going on. I'm not going to tell you what it was. But at one point, two high-profile women were discussing a high-profile male's Botox, which I thought was hilarious, and analyzing it. So, I mean, we had some real conversations going back there.
Of course, one of our sponsors is Tory Burch. She was also featured in our programming at our last summit. She had, her message was about knowing your own worth. And it was kind of a good way to end the half-day conference. Why do you think that that's something that women struggle with? And do you feel as if we made a good step forward in our programming?
I thought this kind of topic was hit upon throughout the day. Brianna Kilar of CNN, and put that. She said, people often ask you, what's your next job, that you want to have, and it's like asking a woman how much does she weigh. I don't know. I'm happy where I am right now, and it was kind of knowing your worth. Like there was just that theme was hit upon, and I think it was a positive message in terms of how you present yourself, how you kind of present yourself in networking and things like that was something that kind of we hit on throughout the day, for sure.
What I liked is we had those two guys who wrote the book, Compelling
People.
Compelling People, right. And we hadn't had, Matt Kohut and John Neffinger. Mm-hmm. And they were fascinating, and I learned a couple of things from them, which was that, one, women can't show anger in the workplace. That in men, anger is a sign of strength, but women just end up looking crazy. And that women can't cry, which of course we often do. So I thought they were a lot of fun to have up there, and they were just so pleased. And I looked around at one point. You can always tell if you're losing the audience because they start staring at their BlackBerries, but nobody was staring at their BlackBerry. Everybody was just riveted on these guys. They were hilarious.
Yeah, and talk about in the green room, there were the only two men involved in our programming. So the poor guys in the backstage in the green room, all these women getting their makeup done.
They were yucking it up. They were
had
pretty
a great
crazy.
I don't think they were any poor guys. They were the
they had
last
a
to
great
leave. I thought they
sports
turned
about
off
it.
the lights.
Yeah,
I mean, they were having so much fun. They moved from one green room to the other. They were having a blast.
We've obviously got a lot of great feedback at the summit and for all of the Women Rule coverage. Lois, what do you think the future plans for Women Rule are?
Well, I think we're going to have a lot of discussions about it, but there's certainly an enormous amount of interest. We'd love to continue it. Personally, I'd like to take it on the road. I mean, I can see doing it in some different cities, maybe some cities that have prominent women mayors. So I think we'll see how we can kind of make this work. We also had the essay series, which was usually popular, and that'd be great to keep that going, women writing on women. So I think there's some options for us. We just have to figure out what we want to do.
Absolutely. All right, Lois Romano, Anna Palmer, thank you for joining us. Everything Women Rule is on Politico.com/Women Rule. You can find more Politico podcasts at Politico.com/podcast. And we're also on iTunes, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. I'm Christine DeLargy, and thank you for joining us.